Welcome to Iraq in 7 Minutes, brought to you by Enabling Peace in Iraq Center. Every week, we dive into key developments and trends in Iraq. I'm Eric Gustafson, EPIC's Executive Director, and from across the pond, joining me is Omar Al-Nadawi, editor of our weekly Iraq report, also known as Isham. Shako Mako, Omar.
Hi, Eric. It's been a busy week, so we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, yes, we do. So here's a quick recap of key events captured in your most recent report, as well as a developing story. On July 25th, and just yesterday, August 5th, rockets targeted Anbar's Ain al-Asad airbase, which houses U.S. military personnel, ending a long pause in hostilities between U.S. forces and Iran-backed Iraqi militias. Several Americans were injured in yesterday's attack. On July 30th, U.S. airstrikes on a PMF compound in Jerf al-Sahar killed at least 4 militiamen. U.S. officials stated the strikes were defensive to prevent militia drone attacks. Kataib Hezbollah, which is known to have bases in that area, warned Kuwait against further U.S. attacks launched from its territory. A military spokesman for Iraqi Prime Minister Sudani condemned the U.S. airstrikes as a heinous crime that undermines U.S.-Iraqi security cooperation, while PMF officials went even further, demanding an immediate decision to expel foreign forces from Iraq. Speaking of that security cooperation, on July 30th, the U.S. delivered 7 new Bell 505 training helicopters to Iraq's Army Aviation Command. And on August 1st, Reuters reported that Iran is preparing to convene a meeting with regional allies, including militant groups from Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, to discuss retaliation for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, believed to have been carried out by Israel. Meanwhile, the plight of returning IDPs in Iraq is worsening, with more than 625,000 people now living in severe conditions. New IOM data reveals significant increases in the number of returnees facing extreme hardships, particularly in Nineveh and Anbar, highlighting urgent, ongoing humanitarian needs in those regions. So now let's turn to a recent development related to energy and the environment. So Omar, a large-scale water injection project has just been inaugurated for the Rumaila oil fields in southern Iraq, designed to reduce reliance on water from the Shat al-Arab waterway. Why is this project important for the environment and for the people of Basra?
Yeah, the importance of this project arises from the fact that Iraq's oil field, many of them are old, and as oil fields get older, they require additional external pressure to be applied to maintain pressure within the reservoirs to keep the oil rising to the surface. And oil fields like Rumaila, which is Iraq's largest and the second largest in the world, produces 1.5 million barrels of oil per day. They suck a large amount of water from Iraq's rivers. I have spoken with people who are familiar with the operations in that area, and the millions of barrels of water per day were drawn from the Shat al-Arab waterway to be injected into Rumaila. So the fact that now there's 300,000 barrels of water that will be coming through this project to be re-injected from water that naturally rises to the surface along with the oil, that's a positive development because that's millions of gallons every day that are going to stay in Iraq's rivers and keep those fragile ecosystems running. Also, it means that millions of gallons of this contaminated water that rises to the surface with oil is no longer going to be, stored in open pits that can potentially contaminate groundwater and the soil, which is a common practice in a lot of oil fields across the world. So an important and positive thing for the Iraqi southern provinces that rely heavily on those waterways.
Well, that sounds related to another story you captured in your most recent report. Local officials in the southern provinces of Diwaniyah and Maysan are reporting large numbers of fish deaths in their waterways and marshes. What's causing these die-offs?
Yes, millions of fish actually were reported dead in those provinces, in rivers and branches of the Tigris and the Euphrates, and in marshes as a result of rising salinity, rising concentrations of dissolved solids, and low oxygen levels in the water. And the fact that industry pulls large amounts of water from the rivers exacerbates the water shortage that naturally happens every summer because of the extreme evaporation that affect Iraq's rivers. Add to that high temperatures reduce the solubility of oxygen in water. That creates even more toxic environment for living animals in those rivers. So really anything that helps keep the water levels close to normal or reduce the stress on those waterways in the south can have a positive impact on alleviating the perennial water shortages that impact the Iraqi waterways in the south. And we know that these systems are very fragile and that millions of people rely on them. In the past, when salinity increased in Iraq's southern rivers, hundreds of thousands of people can go sick. And this has happened in the past in Basra in 2018, 2019, creating really massive public health problems. The oil, the water, the environment are very closely connected, and it's a difficult balance to maintain. And it's good to see that there is some action being taken to protect the rivers from the negative impact of the oil industry.
Thank you so much, Omar, for that analysis. I want to just close recognizing that August 3rd was the 10-year anniversary of the genocide against the Yazidi people by ISIS. At least 5,000 Yazidis were killed in Sinjar, as well as 7,000 Yazidi women and children being kidnapped. So our hearts are with all those who were impacted by those atrocities. So this has been Iraq in 7 minutes, your home for quick hit analysis on Iraq. And you can always subscribe to our weekly Iraq reports, Isham, at enablingpeace.org/Isham, ISHM. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks, Omar.
Thank you, Eric.